Okay, get ready for this. What if the same process that gave us dinosaurs and dolphins is also happening inside your head right now? Every single second. It sounds like science fiction, right? But a really fascinating paper from 2021 is proposing exactly that. The idea is that our brains are constantly running this super high-speed evolutionary simulation to think. Let's dive into how that could possibly work.
So that brings us to this one central, really mind-bending question. Could the exact same Darwinian forces that shape species over millions and millions of years be the very thing that's shaping our thoughts, but on the timescale of milliseconds?
Well, the theory has a name, Darwinian Neurodynamics, or DN for short. And the core idea? It's actually shockingly simple. It says that your thoughts are basically in a constant competition, a kind of survival of the fittest, where the best ideas manage to replicate and spread throughout your brain. It's literally evolution, but for information. Now, to really wrap our heads around how this could possibly work in the brain, let's just do a super quick refresh on the basic recipe for any Darwinian process. It's a surprisingly simple three-step formula.
Okay, so there are three key ingredients. First, you've got to have replication. You need to be able to make copies of something. Second, you need variation. See, those copies can't be perfect. They need little glitches, little changes, or mutations. And finally, number three, you need selection. This is basically a quality check, a filter that decides which copies are fitter and get to make more copies of themselves. That's the whole recipe. You get those three things together, and boom, evolution is pretty much inevitable.
So here's the multi-million-dollar question. Can we actually find these three ingredients, replication, variation, and selection, in the squishy computer that is our brain? The people behind Darwinian Neurodynamics think the answer is a definite yes. So let's see how this all maps out.
Let's just put them side by side. In biology, right, the basic unit is the gene. Well, in the brain, this theory suggests the unit is a specific pattern of neurons firing. Think of it like a little tune. In biology, replication is DNA copying. In the brain, it's one group of neurons teaching its little firing tune to its neighbor. And selection, well, that goes from survival of the fittest organism to something more like survival of the fittest idea.
And this is a really crucial point. We're not talking about the physical brain cells themselves evolving. No. We're talking about the signals, these incredible symphonies of electrical activity that they produce. You can think of these dynamic patterns as the brain's version of genes, like a short musical phrase that can be copied, tweaked a little, and then judged on how good it sounds.
So, how does a thought actually evolve? Well, it starts when one network of neurons just happens to fire in a pattern that's a slightly better solution to whatever you're thinking about. Then, that fitter network becomes a kind of teacher, and it trains its neighbors to copy that successful signal. This just keeps repeating over and over, and, just like in biology, the most effective, most useful patterns spread like wildfire through the entire population of networks.
And here you can see that exact copying mechanism in action. The network up top has the better, fitter signal. It's the teacher. It then sends that pattern over to the learner network below it. And in the process, the old, less fit pattern gets overwritten. This is replication and selection happening all at once, in the blink of an eye.
Okay, so this is all a really cool theory, right? But does it actually work? Can it solve real problems? Well, the researchers put their model to the test with one of the most classic, notoriously tough problems in all of computer science.
They picked the traveling salesman problem. The goal sounds simple enough. Find the shortest possible loop that visits a bunch of cities. But here's the catch. The number of possible routes just explodes as you add more cities. It gets ridiculously hard super fast. It's the perfect challenge for a really powerful problem-solving system.
And the results? They're pretty incredible. As we look from left to right here, focus on that top row. You are literally watching the neural firing patterns, the genes, change over evolutionary time. Now, look at the bottom row. You're seeing the actual paths those patterns represent. The system starts with these random, messy routes, and then, through pure neural evolution, it actually breeds a shorter, cleaner, more efficient path. You are, in a very real sense, watching it think.
And check this out. The researchers made this absolutely incredible visualization. They call it a neural phylogeny. You can think of it as a family tree, but for thoughts. Each of those vertical lines, that's one network's thought as it changes over time. And the color tells you how fit that thought is. Red is the best. Just watch. You can literally see a single, really good idea, that bright red line, pop up and just spread. It completely takes over the whole population. This is Darwinian selection, and we're watching it happen inside a thinking machine. It's just wild.
But here's the thing, just like biological evolution, this whole neural process, it isn't foolproof. The researchers found a critical weakness, a sort of breaking point where the entire thinking process can just catastrophically fall apart.
Remember how variation is a key ingredient? The copies have to be a little bit imperfect to create new, better solutions. But what happens if they become too imperfect? What if there's just too much noise, too many mistakes in the copying process?
This leads us to a concept pulled straight from population genetics called the error threshold. The best way to think about it is like that game of telephone. A few small errors along the way are fine, maybe even a little creative. But you cross a certain tipping point of too many mistakes, and the original message just turns into meaningless gibberish. If the noise in the brain crosses that threshold, the evolution breaks down and all that hard-won information just gets lost.
And this is exactly what that collapse looks like. On the left, with low noise, the system is working beautifully. You see those nice, organized, high-fitness patterns. But just watch what happens when the researchers crank up the neural noise. The organized patterns just dissolve into random static. The system can't hold on to good ideas anymore. All the accumulated knowledge is just gone, lost in the chaos.
So look, this isn't just some cool computer simulation. If something even remotely like Darwinian neurodynamics is actually happening in our brains, the implications for how we understand intelligence, both our own and artificial intelligence, are, well, they're enormous. So what's the big picture? Why does this all matter? Well, this could be a fundamental algorithm our brains use for pretty much everything, from planning your day to writing a song. It could unlock how we understand really complex stuff like language. It might even give us a totally new way to build truly creative and flexible AI. But maybe the most profound idea here is that the line we draw between learning in a single lifetime and evolution over eons, well, that line might be a whole lot blurrier than we ever thought. You know, the authors of the paper said it best. They said if this is really how it works, then our most spectacular intellectual achievements, a genius chess move, a world-changing scientific breakthrough, are directly comparable to the greatest innovations in the history of life. It's the same process, just running on a different machine and a much, much faster clock.
Which really just leaves us with one last huge question to ponder. If our minds are constantly running this evolutionary process, breeding better and better thoughts and solutions, what's the limit? What new ideas, what new creations, what new forms of intelligence could we possibly evolve next?